Cool. So Sam and I are here today to talk about further defining the dashboards, making sure that they're as coherent as possible in terms of providing the necessary visualizations, widgets, pieces of data to answer the different questions or provide answers for the questions we're trying to solve with these dashboards. So I can just share my screen. I guess we can go in order then. Sam, as far as like, you want to start with
Yeah,
audience?
that's fine.
Okay. So I've tried to provide like a little bit of a summary. I mean, the audience one is just basically trying to understand like who are the users of our application. So the goal of the dashboard is to understand more about our users, who they are, how many of them are there, how much time they're spending, so sessions, and then a little bit about like what defines them in terms of browser, platform, resolution, language. Um, as we were discussing previously, Sam, you were mentioning like these two charts of users over time and sessions over time are kind of the key elements there. But I think specifically, what we're trying to figure out is like, we presented more information in the vision proof of concept. And
Mhm.
would that make sense to then bring over into this version of the dashboard specifically for the purposes of our internal preview, which we can continue to add more information or data points later. But what would make a good first
Right.
release of this dashboard?
Right.
Uh,
Well, so I will say one point of nuance. I would say that how much time they are spending is actually a question the behavior dashboard might answer better versus the audience one, but not sure.
that's that. Yeah, I mean, I think the line gets a little blurry just because, yeah, you want to know like how much. Yeah, I
And
mean,
it's not something that we have to spend a lot of time on, just to point it out, because one of the things that I like about the way that we've approached dashboards is that it should be relatively straightforward to modify and update these as we have new information, new widgets, and everything available. So
yeah,
all of this is very much two-way door decision. We can add, edit, remove over time.
yeah.
Um,
I was just
because
thinking
yes,
session durations, like definitely one of those that like walks the fine line between, because sessions is important about like how many people are visiting it and like how often they're doing it. And but then
right,
sessions itself can also like, well, what are they doing? And that would be a good segue into like the behavior dashboard. Um,
right,
and theoretically in both dashboards you could have the same points of data because the two are interconnected. I mean, it's all about your users anyways, right? So
right.
um, yeah,
But
ultimately
so
you can.
like the requirements and issue, I really view these line charts as sort of the critical must-haves
Mhm.
for what this dashboard needs to contain.
Yeah,
Understand how many people you have, as well as the number of sessions that those people are creating over time. That's sort of the baseline of this is what my audience is.
yeah,
Um, Maybe we could start talking through the single stat ones just to discuss
yeah.
what each of those are. So is the users one the summation of every day that's shown in the line chart
uh
over that
so
time period?
so we still have to kind of decide how we want to do the whole filtering and that kind of thing, but my understanding, and so just as from the goal of the single stats, just to kind of take one step back, is like to provide some type of like overview KPIs, right? So to demonstrate like, yeah, you have like these critical pieces of information with the line charts, but the single stat should give you like a decent overview of like, should I be worried about anything? If that users, and so going into users, that to me is the total amount of users that have activity for the given time frame that you selected. So in this screenshot specifically, it's like how many users total are there this month? And so the line chart should sum up to that in terms of like total users across the entire time frame.
Okay.
Um,
So for this screenshot, it should total to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
yeah, we should
Then
assume the values aren't correct. It was just the vision,
okay.
the proof of concept. So
Okay.
um, I think one thing that and a question that's important to discuss as well is like, so we've got like new users as well. One of the metrics we were tracking or potentially being able to track with sessions is being able to determine new versus returning users. So I think we can clarify this to like, I think this makes more sense as like unique users. So it makes a little bit more sense versus like,
Yeah, so I definitely think that needs some clarification.
right.
So
Because
let's
users
start
is just
writing
very
some of this
ambiguous. Yeah.
down.
Mhm.
So the question about unique users will be, and this is an issue we have with what we do with our own product intelligence at GitLab,
Mhm.
is unique users. like say I, Sam, visited the page 3 days in a row. If it's a simple summation, the number would be 3, but unique users to most people would be 1 in that
Right.
case.
Right.
So we have to make that distinction clear over which one we're showing. I think there's value in both. I think unique users is probably more useful, but I also don't know if that's going to be, if that's technically difficult or not.
That's something worth exploring, and I think that's why it's important we're doing this definition now, because as far as I understand it, Jitsi does fingerprint even with privacy. It definitely does fingerprint with privacy mode enabled. So therefore, it still will keep the same anonymous user ID as long as it can. So theoretically, that number should be as accurate as possible. And then leaving it to how users want to use the SDK. If they disable privacy mode, or they are, or they are quite literally associating users with their IDs, which we theoretically could if we instrumented GitLab.com. Then you have a more accurate measure of that. And ultimately, that's however you define that single stat to like whatever dimension you pin that on, right? And so for now, we would pin that probably on like user anonymous ID to start for the internal preview. But theoretically, a user can go in and say, I literally have their user ID, so I want the total unique count of all user IDs, which would give you your most accurate figure there. Yeah. But I would
because I
agree.
think in terms of privacy mode, whatever the user decides to do, they'll have to understand the implications of this is going to change your data in this way, which you would expect to see on these charts in this way. So I think that's okay.
Yeah. And then
yeah, so that would be the total unique number of user anonymous ID values over that time period then, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so call that out. New users is an interesting one because it'd be.
I don't quite know what that was intended to be. Do you?
No, I think that was just another figure for the proof of concept. I'm trying to think in terms of new versus returning sessions, but again, that gets into sessions and how deep do we want to go into it for the audience? Because new versus returning sessions, what does that mean in the context of GitLab? First time visitors, but
yeah. So it'd
does
be
that really
someone
apply?
It'd be someone we've never seen before,
right?
Versus someone we have.
But that is fairly common. Like I was flipping through Google, competitor applications, and it is an interesting metric they do point out, because I think for your more generic applications, or if you think of like, I guess more commerce based or marketing based applications, which we're not immediately gearing towards right now, but even for product based applications, you would be curious to see how many new people you're bringing in, especially if you're investing in like advertising and marketing, right? So then,
well, because there's a big difference between my audience is growing, but it's the same people are using my product more and more versus I'm getting actual new growth from new humans that have never tried it before.
Okay. So the more I think about it, the more it makes sense, and the more it makes sense to track, of these sessions coming in, how many of them are new. There, or put another way, there's no other previous event data on this anonymous user ID. So I think that's worth at least investigating. I don't know how easy it would be to implement that or to boil that down to a single step, but I think it'd be worth exploring.
Well, and if it is possible to do that, what do you think about showing this as a ratio rather than a raw number? Because I think there's not, it's going to be more difficult for people to associate, here's an absolute number, and is this a big number or a small number for my data set, where you're really looking more for the ratio of, hey, you did this campaign to launch a new feature, you now have 30% of your usage from new humans versus 10% previously.
Yeah, I think short answer is I think it's useful. I think it's one of those, and I don't know that we have this built into the single stat. It's one of those metrics where you kind of prioritize one value over the other. And to me, yeah, that delta or whatever, that percentage is more important. But then you can present like the total number as like here's how much of that makes sense. So like,
Well, since it's going to be next to the total unique users, that's a very closely related piece of information that you could use to figure out the raw value if you needed it.
right. I guess, yeah. And so maybe I am definitely scope creeping, but like one something worth exploring is like, could we explore in a later iteration? Because it's one of those things where you show like 30%, but in quotes, or it's like, 30%, and then whatever that value is, like, if it's out of 100, you have 30 actual like new users or something like that.
Let me pull up our charting library we talked about this morning. I wonder if that's already built in to some of that.
I don't know if single stat was one that we like custom built or if that's part of eCharts.
No,
That's why I was
that's
hesitant about
built
it.
in. Yeah,
That's
so
built
that's
in.
built in.
Okay.
So we can do something where it has a badge, but that's probably not appropriate.
Mm,
Or an icon.
what's the name of it? I can pull it up on.
Single dash stat. I'll drop a link in Zoom.
I know. I mean, I don't know if that's built into eCharts, is what I meant to say. Yeah. But yeah.
Looks kind of weird with a badge. Or you could put units on it, but that doesn't look.
No.
I know what you're talking
You
about
know
in
what I'm
terms of
going
what you're
for,
looking
though.
for, but I don't
Yeah.
think we have it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's something we can explore as a later iteration for sure, then, because that's not built in.
Yeah.
I will remove that from the description once we actually present that, because
Well,
that's
another
definitely...
thing we can also do a single stats. Do we have the option to make the text bigger or smaller?
I don't believe we have.
Because if we
No.
do, we could just show the more important one on top in big letters, and then the less important one below in smaller letters.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of think. Like, it's supposed to something like this, where it's like, but the badge shouldn't be a thing. I don't think like that visual presentation. I don't think is appropriate. Just like it's just like subtext. Like that's what we call it in eCharts at least, where it's just like here's just a byline that gives you another value in case you were curious about it. But I don't think we have control.
No, I'm talking about like using the 30% thing, copy and paste that below it. It says 42, but in a smaller text, smaller font, so it's less visually prominent.
Yeah.
But then that's just a second widget that we add to the dashboard with different information and smaller text size.
I mean, I guess we could do something where you would literally...
I don't see a font size option on here though.
No, there's no, sorry. So to answer your question, there's no option to like customize it from this point on.
Okay. Well, maybe. Never mind then. No,
Yeah, I think we'd have to investigate that, or like
let's come back to this then.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, well, that's fine. We can start with the percentage. I think that is more valuable. And then they can still derive the calculation from that if they want to, and then we can iterate on that further later on. Total number of sessions, I think makes sense. Yeah, sessions.
Because that's just the summation as an integer of what the line chart is displaying, correct?
Yeah, I would say like total summation, or summation rather.
You know what we can do actually that'll help make this really crisp is we can get this memorialized in text form and then put all this together using pivot charts in Excel to make it very clear what we're asking for here.
Yes.
Because that way we can have an example of going directly from here's a representative data set, here's the visualization formatted in the way that we want, and what it should look like as Excel, Google Sheets, obviously, and convert it into our formatting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll definitely want to like make it clear in terms of like what output we are, but we can just...
Everything boils down to Excel.
Yeah, ultimately. Seriously. Yeah, basically. Yeah. I mean, what I want to write is literally like average total sessions,
Yeah.
total users. Or we
And
can
this
clean
is
that
what we
up later.
talked about this morning on how we're able to determine sessions still, correct?
Right. Well, this morning,
Or was that yesterday?
that was yesterday, but
That
it's
was
how we
yesterday.
determine sessions. Yes, because we need to be able to, distinguish 30-minute gaps of inactivity between events. And so, if I have lunch and I was working all before and after, then I would have 2 sessions for myself, but other people work differently, that kind of stuff. So on average, how much, I think, yeah, that's actually quite interesting. Like, how much do people come back, and then how much time are they spending for each session? Because then you can get into some interesting types of, like, different license types or personas or roles even. How much work do they do? Though obviously our roles are a bit more simplistic, but yeah. Anyways. Cool. As far as tables, I think what we have noted down so far and what has been showed in the proof of concept platform, like device type, is that important right now? I guess device type.
Well, because what's going to be the goal of this? This is to provide the definitive set of raw data, and we're just going to be dumping the test data here, or do we want to have these tables be a breakdown of here's your distribution by browser, resolution, etc.? Because in that case, table might not be the best way to actually display some of this compared to say a bar chart if we have that available.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's also one thing worth bearing in mind right now is, like, I'm going off of the assumption that we're just working with what's available, and so hopefully in this milestone we'll have
just line
single stat, and table. So I would agree, like, there are definitely better ways to represent that, and then we would also want to think about limiting it. But again, in terms of the context of, like, what can we show to just demonstrate that, yeah, you have top level KPIs that you can, like, give you quick insight, a little bit of things you can get kind of dig in further, and then tabular data is kind of like your go-to as far as, like, okay, eventually this will be something that you can customize and you can then add custom attributes and things like that. But here, as far as our conventional defaults, right? Like, here's some information about your users.
Will we aggregate that over the sessions then? Or will we aggregate that over raw number of events? Or how do we want to actually compute the values for that? Because that'll be different.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'm kind of leaning towards having I don't know. Because if we do it by sessions, the same human would have multiple entries if they switch browsers.
I say per unique user or per unique. I mean, ultimately, someone can change that, right? Like, if they feel like it's necessary. I'm just thinking.
We just play both if we're in a table.
You could, right? You could define
if you scroll down, it has the sessions.count.
It does have the sessions count. Huh?
See how it says sessions count? Could we just have another column there that's the user count?
We could. So I'm not sure how we would want to present this, if we want to have, like, this in tabular form or if we want multiple tables. So my concern,
we have the option of tabular tables like that.
We would have to build that into the widget.
Because if we have multiple tables on the same page, that's going to be unreadable almost immediately.
Right, which is why I'm hesitant about adding another column for every table. So I think
no. Sorry. So on the, like, between sessions.browser, sessions.count, add a new column of users.count.
Right. What I'm saying is, if it's tabbed, then that's fine. But if we have 2 or 3 tables with 3 columns each, that gets even more cluttered, right?
No. Sorry. One column, one table with 3 columns right here.
Right. I understand that. What I'm saying is, if we don't have tabs here, would we show additional tables? And so if we're showing,
we're talking about different things. I don't think if we have the tab option, we don't do any additional tables. If we don't have tabs, we choose one table to display and keep it simple.
Right. What I'm saying is, we don't have tabs right now.
Okay.
So assuming we have tables built out, we'd still have to build tabs. So in terms of like what we could build immediately, it would be multiple tables. And so if you're
Got
asking
it.
to introduce a third column and we have to introduce multiple tables, then that gets very visually cluttered, right?
Got it. No, I think if we don't have, I think we should work on the assumption we won't have tabs available.
Right.
We choose to only display the browser information in
Okay.
that case. And then resolution, language, and platform OS and the other items, we just do until we have either a different way of visualizing them or a tabular approach to tables.
Sure.
And then we do have a 3-column table in that case.
So then my question is, will the user understand what's going on when they see top browsers listed by sessions count or user count, unique users? And then which one do we sort by?
They should understand it because your table would be showing you, hey, you have 41,000 sessions using this version of headless Chrome. You have 58 users using that same version of headless Chrome. Or you have 34 users, 34 sessions using Chrome 103, but you have 34 users using it as well. So I don't think that would be confusing to people viewing the dashboard. Yeah, I forgot the second part of your question. I'm sorry.
That's fine. No, that answers it.
I do think of these 5 items here, browser is the number one we want if we can only support one because we don't have tabs.
Right. So let's just close these for now.
Although maybe a question then is what do we lose if we just get rid of the table altogether from the default one and let people build their own tables in their own dashboards?
I mean, the whole point of this is just to kind of show that we can have tables in the dashboards if we let them build their own. When does that get into their hands? This is just to provide a little bit of like a sneak preview of like what they can do. Eventually, so I mean, it's easy to say like, okay, we only show browser right now, but at some point you can choose whatever dimension you want, right? Resolution, language, platform, OS, device, whatever.
Right.
So if you omit it entirely, then we kind of lose a little. I feel like we lose a little bit of that value.
I guess I'm thinking though, if we cut it from here, we would still have presumably a table on the behavior tab to show how you can use a table.
But why cut it here, not in behavior?
Yeah, not sure. I just wanted to throw the question out there. Since the table on this POC diagram is a lot more complicated than the table on the behavior one, which is just the page areas single table.
We don't even track page area. I mean, in what way is this more complicated than the behavior one?
With the tabs.
But we're assuming we I thought we said we weren't assuming. I thought we were assuming we don't have tabs.
We are.
Okay.
All right, never mind. We'll keep the So my line of thought there was we went from this tabular table being too complicated, so we wanted to simplify to just a single table. Is it worth discussing simplifying to the point of no table at all, though? Was my line of thinking there.
No, I think that completely diminishes what we're trying to do here. We're simplifying because of what's technically possible, right? But we are quite literally working on table. So we already have it. I mean, theoretically, Tim already has it in his query designer. So like we can do it. I don't, yeah. Am I misunderstanding?
Okay. Now let's keep it then. So we'll do the browser single table. We'll punt the tabular tables until that's a UX convention we support.
Okay. Are you saying like you don't think it's valuable with the single dimension, or?
Well, so there's always the question in dashboards about when does it become too information rich to the point where it's too noisy, right? And I'm just asking the question of if we remove the table, how much more or less valuable is the dashboard as a whole afterwards. Because I think we're already at the point, if we add more widgets, we're probably getting to the too noisy part. We were looking for ways to simplify the table. So
I mean,
wanted
that's
to ask
subjective, right? I mean, we have some Sisense dashboard where people have added like 50 different visualizations on a single one.
those are the worst.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree. But like you should have something that makes sense. But you know, some of our group ones are that big. I feel like that's subjective and then lends itself to the whole fact that they're customizable. So the whole point of this though, and my goal with the internal preview at least is just like to demonstrate what we can do so far with the dashboards. Do I think the tables makes the dashboard as a whole too much? Sure, but I think there's ways you can arrange it that you can like maybe put these two columns these two line charts side by side, and you know bring them a little bit above the fold. But I'd be curious about what devices or what like languages the users are using, especially if you're thinking in terms of like the average.
Yeah, let's keep the table in.
Application developer. Okay. All right. So we're almost at time, but I think we covered. Sorry, I keep scrolling, but
I'm good probably if you are.
Okay.
Or we can break, because I think that's probably good for the audience dashboard.
Yeah, I think we've covered the audience dashboard, and
we can talk more about the organization of the widgets, like where they fit on the screen, but I think we can do that async. That should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that like, you know, what data do we want to present and how we would expect that to be.
Sure.
Like what's there. So like I think this is obviously like a big improvement over what doesn't exist before. So anyways,
yeah. All right, so let's talk about behavior then. Because this one, we're really trying to get to the point of that you have your users. This is talking about what they're doing, how they actually behave and interface with your application, right? So similar to the previous one, it's really the line charts for me that are the critical sort of things that have to be here in terms of page views as well as events. They're happening over time. I think we can probably do a similar process we did on the previous one to just, if you want to just talk through each of these single stats and what this is.
I'm just bringing them over.
So page views just being the summation of what the line chart is displaying, right?
Sorry, apparently copy
I'll let you catch
does
up
not
on
work
that.
here. Give me a sec. Why? Okay. Let's just start over here. There we go. This is my first time using this rich text editor, and it's working well for the most part, but okay. So we go into page views. I think summation makes sense here. Because it's just of a given time zone or time period, how many page views? So total page views. That's fine. Unique page views. That's interesting. What does that even mean? I don't think that makes sense. Does that make sense? Like how many unique pages?
So looking up, like searching it, it's usually the number of sessions from which a specified page is viewed at least once. Sessions. That one's confusing to me.
I don't like that one, and I also don't.
What if we strike? Let's strike that one.
Yeah, same thing with
anyone watching the recording. If you feel strongly about it, let's chat.
I don't. I'm just what I want to do is just review what's been screenshot, get rid of these screenshots, and then come up with better wireframe, more accurate wireframes. So logins, I mean, it would be cool at some point to like track custom events, but we're not looking at that right now. And so I don't think that's something we want to add as far as
I think we strike logins as well.
So events, total number of events, that's fine.
Yeah, it's just the same thing for the line chart.
And average time on page. That's an interesting. I don't think we track that right now. So I don't think we can. We can investigate that, perhaps. But I'm fine striking that out if that's going to take too long.
Yeah, let's take a little note as maybe something to investigate and maybe put an issue together if it's a big lift. But I don't think we need it for V1 of this.
Okay. So going on the same assumption, it should be a lot easier now that we've discussed at length about tables and the limitations and what we want for this, at least
Well,
initial
especially
dashboard.
if we don't have page areas, this becomes kind of a moot point, right?
Oh, it
Um,
doesn't make so like we can do that for internal handbook, but we have to like create that because we don't have Rails page slugs like we do on GitLab.com. And that to me is like that's something we can track and we can add, but I think for now, and because we only have one table, just for like the simplification of it, I would just say like top events or top pages or something like that.
yeah, no, yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. I agree. Just the unique pages and show the ones which are the most commonly viewed, I think is useful for what this table should display.
Yep.
Because that should be easy because we have a specific column we're already recording for doc path, right? So
Oh,
we're
exactly.
using the doc path and
Yeah.
sorting by that.
We can even use the page name. Yeah.
The page name different than doc path.
I think doc path is the URL after the top level domain. I might be wrong on that though. I haven't.
Yeah, it's past the slash. So like slash handbook.
Yeah, but we have one I think called doc title or something like that. Do you want to do title or do you want to do URL?
I don't see a doc URL or a title value.
I don't know if this is gonna.
We have a doc host, but that's the overall URL. So like internal handbook.gitlab.io or localhost. Maybe stop sharing if you're going to look at test data for the
I don't
recording.
even know if it was showing it or not.
Okay.
Here.
Oh, it's just called URL, I think, is what this column is.
We have a.
Yeah, it's just called URL, and that's the full URL with the host as well as the path concatenated.
Okay, so do we want to show the page title though, or like what do you want to? What do you think?
I don't have a strong opinion about this. For our internal purposes, all of this should just say internal handbook-gitlab.io. So no one cares about that. The question, I guess, would be, are you using a single GitLab project to host multiple websites that have unique URLs? Which, saying that out loud, I don't think you would,
You
right?
can,
Like
but
you
I
would.
don't think that's what we would recommend or what we intend for it to be, right?
Yeah, let's just do doc path then,
Yeah, I
actually,
think
if you're
doc
okay with
path's fine.
it.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think this becomes a different story if we talk about this at a group level where you have multiple projects which each have their own website, but we're talking project level for right
Yeah,
now.
this is connected at the project level, and in the same way we use other products where it's like you have a single property, like that's not as a project in this case. So I mean, theoretically, you could track multiple websites with this, and we technically are kind of, but you shouldn't be, at least in terms of how we intended at the project level. So, okay, that works for me.
Cool. Is there anything else we would want to put on either behavior or the audience dashboard then that wasn't captured in the vision POC that we can think of?
I'm sure there are, especially with regards to like the table, but going on just a simple one table, set of single stats. I think that's enough to go on for now. I don't think we have to like. I think what we have is plenty, is what I'm trying to say. How do you feel?
Okay, cool. Well, let's move forward with this then.
Okay.
So I think in terms of next steps, I will go ahead and try and create a pivot chart version of each of these, if that's helpful. Upload those as a design file.
Yeah.
So that can be used, and then we can mark the vision POCs screenshots as deprecated, and use the requirement list above instead going forward.
That works for me.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think this will be great once we get it all put together.
No, for sure. I think this was very useful in terms of getting a little bit more specific about what we're expecting to see on the dashboards into the next milestone. So cool. Awesome. Yeah. Then I will edit this recording I didn't realize I was going to show my terminal because I selected a specific window, but I will edit that out and then upload it.
I saw a white box for a while. I don't think I ever saw your terminal.
Okay. When you
Maybe
said,
double check though, just in case.
yeah. So we're in a good place now with the dashboards. I think we've defined the requirements. And so
Yeah,
we'll review this.
I think it ended up in a good spot.
Yeah. So we'll Sammy will work on the kind of pivot table version of that. We'll deprecate these proof of concept screenshots, and then we'll review it with the team next week.
Yep, sounds good.
Awesome. Sam, I will catch you later then.
All right, we will talk soon, I'm sure, guys.
All right. Yeah.
All right.
See you later.
Have a good one. See ya.
Ciao.